We're on our second new moon here in Virgo in 2025. There's three things that are so rare and unique about this particular Virgo season compared to other Virgo seasons in 2025 here. The first thing is having the two new moons in the season of Virgo. That's something that happens maybe once every 19 years. So, and when I say maybe, what I mean is maybe, because while things do go on a cycle, the axis of the earth does slow down. So the next time that it is time for two new moons in the season of Virgo, we possibly won't quite get it. It happens just before things are at 1 degree. Now, the speed of the earth can, the trajectory of the slowing down and the speed of the earth can change based on various things that can happen in our atmosphere and in our universe. However, the next time, it's not quite at 1 degree. That's the trajectory for now, if nothing changes. So it happens, but it doesn't really, not quite. So this is particularly unique. The last time that it happened was 2019. The moon was at 6 degrees in Virgo, and that was on August 30th. And then on September 28th, the moon was at 5 degrees in Libra. And so it wasn't fully in Virgo either. So it is really rare that this happens. There was another astrological alignment that occurred with our outer planets being all at 1 degree. And the number 1 is very much an Aries type number. It's masculine, individualistic, focused on the south. And then it was these outer planets which rule structure and karma and the type of power that's less about our personal daily empowerment and more about the fates. Well, those degrees were not just at 1 degree, but they were in Aries. So it was like a double whammy of like, pay attention to what's going on an individualistic level. And it's really interesting because, you know, ushering in the age of Aquarius, which is all about the collective and collective awareness and bringing awareness in the collective in regards to the things that are more hidden, bringing them to light so that there can be an overall better functioning as a whole. So that would be Aquarius type energy. And so that happening, those very individualistic degrees with these outer planets that have to do with fate and them lining up in a triangle, in very Aries type, masculine type, individualistic type energies, that happening during this Virgo season was also really interesting because those energies also have to do with new beginnings, similar to this Virgo energy that we've been having has a theme of new beginnings, and new moons have a theme of new beginnings, and eclipses can also have a theme of new beginnings. The eclipses type of when new beginnings come in an eclipse type energy, sometimes it can be like, whoop, the baby fell out when mama was pulling the turkey out of the oven on, you know, Christmas dinner, kind of like, you know, like unexpected things that happen that create new beginnings. So it's really interesting because the last time we had those aspects of Aries and the 1 degrees, that was like the 1400s. And the last time Pluto was in Aquarius was about 260 years ago. So it makes things very unique. So paying homage to Cancer being in Jupiter, and Cancer has to do with like paying attention to history. And Jupiter has to do with expansion. So pay attention to history and then pay attention to it some more. So the last time we had this kind of type of alignment with the Virgo and the 2 new moons during Virgo season or around Virgo season was about, 19 years ago, but not quite. We had, so here this year, we had our new moon at 2 degrees Virgo. And that was at the very beginning, just a few days into Virgo season. And 2 is the number for relation, and it's for feelings. So it's how do we relate to others in regards to our relationship, and the purpose of a relationship is to explore feelings. How do we have emotional regulation? Emotional regulation is what we come down to earth to experience and learn about, so that we can, that's what we're here for. That's the thing that makes planet Earth different for humanity than the ethers or other places. So there's feelings. So there's a new moon, which is when the moon is dark. So it represents our unconscious. So there's feelings. And as the new moon becomes full, those feelings come to light. So for the first 2 weeks, you had feelings coming to light. In regards to our relationship. And now that can be relationship with other people. It can be a relationship with situations, specifically situations in day-to-day life, because Virgo tends to rule our day-to-day life actions, and very much so in regards to our health. And health on a holistic level, whether the health has to do with our physical health, what we're putting in our bodies, or our mental health, what we're feeding our minds, or whether it has to do with our energetic frequency and hygiene energetically. Are we only focused on taking in medicines that, are grown in poop all the time, or, come from the lowest vibrations, and that are we taking too much of it, or are we taking medicine that comes from higher trees that gets more sunlight? So it can be not yet about balance, but it can definitely be about getting detailed, and for some of us more neurotically than others, in regards to what we need and what we want for what we consider perfection. Virgo energy is about the cream of the crop. Every new moon, I always talk about, what seeds are you planting? What are the goals that you're setting for yourself? Well, new moon in Virgo is not the time for that. The new moon in Virgo is not like the other new moons in the cycle. The new moon in Virgo is a time where it's okay, you've already done all your planting, and now it's harvest. What's the cream of your crop, and what are you going to use it for? So your new moon is what's the cream of your crop? And then from your new moon, when it's dark, it might be kind of unconscious. You might have jewels and creams of crops that you don't even realize, gifts that you have been really cultivating for a really long time that you haven't even given yourself credit for yet. And then that comes to recognition within the next 2 weeks after that new moon. And so then the question becomes, at that full moon in Virgo, what are you going to do with the cream of your crop? So maybe for my little friend Falcor here, Falcor. So for my little friend Falcor here, her cream of the crop this year maybe has been her focus. She's gotten really good at focusing. She's a little Scorpio, and she's getting older, and she's just getting really good at learning the things that she's been taught to learn. So not barking all the time. Sometimes she can talk instead of barking, and talking can be a little less disturbing for others who are cohabitating with her. So that's just an example. Her cream of the crop could be she's gotten really good at her focus in regards to her training. And so what are we going to do with that focus? What is she going to do with that focus? And it's about harnessing what she's going to do with that focus. Because if you just start going along willy-nilly and not paying attention to these cycles and what have you, yes, there are a lot of things happening right now where fate is going to move things around and put you where you need to be to have the experiences that you're supposed to have. definitely. We have 3 yods, like, oh my god, we have 3 of them right now. And so the fates are definitely involved. However, you know, like, let's say I'm not paying attention to like what Falcor's cream of the crop is and how well she's doing at her focus, and I let that go by the wayside. She could end up focusing on a hot spot and just looking at that hot spot on her arm over and over again until it turns into a sore or something like that. So you really want to like pay attention to like what's the cream of your crop. And the cream of your crop tech is probably something that you've been really focused on since like the Pisces season, so February or March of last year. Yeah. So okay, I'm at 10 minutes. I'm gonna try to keep this super short and sweet. Keep it simple, sweet. Kiss. I'm gonna try to kiss y'all here. So yeah, what's the cream of your crop? Is there something that you've been really all about? Because this is it's a new chapter in so many ways. So going back to, whether you've been consciously working on these things or unconsciously. And if it's unconscious, if you can't think of it, if you're like, I have no idea what kind of new things are going on for me, then you're going to want to look into your dreams. Okay. You don't remember your dreams, then the universe is going to show you. You're going to just have things happen, maybe whatever. So, okay. And don't worry, because the things that are happening, they're meant to happen. They are meant to happen because there are things you're supposed to experience. And, yeah. So, grace and compassion, sent to you if it happens for you that way. Because, I think a lot of us like to be in control of it. So we like to get ahead of it. So back to those 1 degrees and the outer planets that happened during this Virgo cycle. And I really thought this was, I don't know why I felt like this was really interesting. So a lot of what's going on right now is transiting my particular natal chart. And like I have a Virgo midheaven and a high degree. And, we're in Virgo season, and I'm a triple Pisces, and Pisces is the opposite of Virgo. And we've had, these Pisces Virgo polarities. So whenever, the sun is in one sign, which is Virgo, this season has been, the earth is moving through the consciousness of the opposite, which is Pisces. So that's been transiting my natal. And I have, Aries and Jupiter, and I have Cancer at a very high degree. So Cancer has been in Jupiter, high degree, and Aries, there has been Aries aspects occurring. So naturally we notice what's closest to us. I mean, and so one of the things that I'll say, I'm being moved to say this right now, and I wasn't even thinking about this before this moment, but I'll go ahead and say it. One of the things that Aries can be really good at is boundaries. Anything that's outside of the self, anything that's outside of Aries are all about the projects, and projects as in, not as in the less desirable, more uncomfortable places to live, but as in projects, as in like the things that you're doing, trailblazing, the new beginnings. Aries is all about that. And Aries is all about having that experience, like gung-ho, just go for it, and being in it viscerally, and disregarding other things that are around it, and just focusing on that. So Aries can be really good without even trying at that kind of boundary work. I know Aries that are just, they do their own thing, and they're not like really thinking about, unless they consider unless they want to possess a person, place, or thing, they are not trying. They like to control things. But unless they consider it like to be theirs to control, they stay out of it and they just stick to their own. So that's one thing. So we had this violent occurrence that happened really out in the open. And we have violence where I live in the United States pretty regularly. And I know that violence occurs in other parts of the world too, but it tends to be more like, I think, because of wars. But where I happen to live, we have a lot of violence. It happens because a lot of people have guns around where I live in the United States, in the Northern Hemisphere. And so things like a lot of children will be their lives will be unalived really quickly. And that has happened regularly. People when people gather in public settings, like to go to concerts and things like that, they can be unalived very quickly, lots of them. So this is like a thing that I think is a reality where I happen to live in the Northern Hemisphere in the United States. And it's, because, people have access to, the things that make that happen. So violence has been a regular thing. And then also violence that is, they call it politically, they called this particular violent thing that happened in Virgo season, politically motivated. And I don't really understand that, because it just seems like it's a human thing to me. I mean, human beings are human beings. This isn't about, whether, what politics is like, what kind of laws do you want to have about how much you pay for your electricity? I think, that's what like politics is, isn't it? This was more like on a human level. And it's used for control. Similarly to how maybe people living off the land in the middle of nowhere might use weapons to control their environment if maybe they feel like there's too many wolves for them to grow their chickens. So they'll get rid of some of the wolves, and the wolves then become the bad guys, which is part of like fairy tales, right? So anyway, I digress. But back to the point. We have a lot of people who, move through society that are less marginalized, that are able to have the privilege of just self-focus. And these tend to be the people who are at the top. We live in the United States, in the upper hemisphere. We are in a hierarchy and a patriarchy. Our country was founded upon God principles, which is hierarchy. And then those God principles, because of various kings and rulers before this country was colonized, because of that, there were words that were rewritten to make things not just hierarchical, but also patriarchal, which means that according to the hierarchical system, the next level down would be the patriarchal system, which designated the man as the head of the household and the man as the next best thing to God, so to speak. So that is a reality in the part of the world where I live. So the people who are at the top of that hierarchy and that patriarchy have had the privilege of not necessarily needing to be bothered with the hole in the sock, so to speak. And when I say the hole in the sock, this is a metaphor. The hole in the sock is a metaphor. If the whole body was society, and the hole in the sock was this underbelly of what people call the underdogs or whatever, if you look at it as the hole in the sock, instead of looking at it as there's the underdogs, or there's the projects, or there's marginalized populations, if you look at it as there's a hole in the sock on the body of the person, and the body of the person needs to get by day to day, and do various things. Maybe people like to have a walk on their lunch break. Maybe they want to check out that really cool little store around the corner from where they work, and they want to have a walk, or maybe they take the train, or maybe they just want to walk to their car in the parking lot. But eventually that holes in socks happen. It's a normal thing, just like holes in your gloves, or, eventually you get to a point where you either need to replace the sock, or you need to mend it. You need to take care of it. You can't just keep going with a hole in your sock and thinking like, well, no one's going to see it, so it doesn't matter. Or, it's not getting in the way. Eventually you're going to end up with like some kind of callus on the bottom of your foot. You're going to start limping. It's going to affect your knees. It's going to affect your hips. Like in time, if you don't take care of that situation, or if you don't get your shoes resoled, or you don't like get a new pair of shoes, if you don't take care of things, even if it's stuff that people can't see, if you don't take care of it, eventually it turns into a problem. Does that mean that it was always a problem? Does that mean that feet are bad? Does that mean that holes in socks? I mean, does that mean that you chop off the foot? No. Does that mean that you condemn the foot? Does that mean that you decide that since the beginning of time, God decided that feet are bad? No. Like, you just take care of it. So, violence has been occurring for a really long time with marginalized parts of community. There are people who are Black who see videos regularly that are taken on people's phones and that are taken from body cameras of officers who have been violent towards people who have called for help. And because they were Black, and because Black is not the dominant culture in the upper Northwest United States where I live, the people are, and they have been for a very long time, treated as in a certain way. So, and it's not a good way. So these kinds of things have been happening for a really long time. Women all over the world have been experiencing violence on a regular basis for a really long time. But the people who are kind of have the most responsibility because they have the most privilege, who are at the top of the hierarchy or the patriarchy, which is the way things are designed, have had the privilege of just looking the other way when it happens and not acknowledging it as real or valid. And projecting, because when you're kind of at the top of a hierarchy or a patriarchy, you're babied in a way because you're sheltered. So then what happens is that experience of being babied or sheltered in a way kind of gets projected outward when attention is drawn to it. So instead of owning the experience as true and real and valid and taking responsibility, the projection of being babied gets put out like, no, you're the baby. And if you complain about it, you're wrong and you're bad and you're not a very good person. And you're complaining rather than you're simply a manifestation of like being, you're part of the foot that's experiencing a hole in the sock that needs to get changed. And just because it's out of sight doesn't mean that it's going to be out of mind forever. So with these 1 degree Aries transits that were occurring in these outer planets that have to do with fate, basically, it has to do with, past lives and Pluto and Neptune and Uranus, and all of those outer planets have more to do with fate, because these are patterns that go on and on since the beginning of time. Well, those being at 1 degree, which is just so rare, like 1400s, all of them, like that. It's so long time, such a long time ago. Like 1400s, was that like the Dark Ages? I don't remember. I mean, I wasn't alive in this form then, but a long time ago, right? That the individuals had to like look and see like, oh, this is the reality of things and it needs to get taken care of. So do we take responsibility, or are we like the fable of the guy who has a golden goose? Because if you think about it, we kind of have a golden goose. When you think about technology and all the things that it can do for us in so many wonderful ways, and there's myths and fables about this too. Like in Atlantis, they had, technology, and they were so technologically advanced, and so advanced also spiritually, that telepathic energies were also part of like in these fables. So are we going to be like the story of the guy with the golden goose? And that story is that he wants more than just that one golden egg once a week or once a day. He wants more. He wants more than what he was told that it would be when he got the golden goose to begin with. And his gratitude goes away and he gets greedy. Are we going to be like that? And what he ends up doing is cutting the goose up. because he's thinking that the goose has all these golden eggs inside of it. And then he ruins his chances at getting this golden egg every day or every week or whatever. Are we going to be like that? We don't want to chop off the foot, right? Like, so it's really kind of simple in some ways. It's about maintenance. And this happening in Virgo season. Virgo is all about the maintenance. And it's all about paying attention to these fine little details. You know, Virgo season, you might find, depending on what transits your chart. I know this is really common for me because I have a midheaven at Pluto, Virgo. I mean, I go in the cupboards and I'm like, the back of the cupboards, like there's, doesn't need to be a spider web in the back of the cupboards. Like, that's not where I want the spiders in my home to live. I want them to live over there or over here. So, you get really detailed during Virgo season in regards to maintenance, in regards to hygiene, in regards to cleanliness, in regards to, taking care of things. And you're not going to throw out the cupboards just because the inside of the cupboard needs to be tended to and organized, so to speak. And sometimes when we are very much in that Aries type energy and it's go, 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 and it's like, do the project and don't look around and don't listen to anything else. Especially with like where I happen to live, psychedelics are a big thing. And people get all about their inner child. When, you're on psychedelics, you're like, my inner child's alive, yay. But you tell somebody, in that moment, something that they have to be aware of, that they have to be responsible for, the immediate reaction is a coping mechanism of denial. Like when one is in their inner child, they are not supposed to be held as responsible as when one is, fully embodied in their grown-up self. So it's a time for humanity to like level up and grow up in really big ways and take responsibility. And if we take responsibility for these little things, we'll see it's not that big of a deal. It's just something that has to be done. Yeah, maybe it's not as fun, but it's something that has to be done. It's something that has to be noticed and recognized. So yeah, I think that I noticed when this public violence happened, and it happened to somebody that the people who are more at the top of our hierarchy and the top of our patriarchy, it happened in a way that they could see like, hey, they could see like they could relate to it because it was somebody who kind of looked like them and resembled them. And it was somebody they could relate to. It was somebody who was part of the dominant cultural religion of the United States, Northern Hemisphere, which when this land was colonized, it was Christianity. It was under God we trust that it was taken. So the people at the top of this hierarchy and this patriarchy saw this and they're like, oh, that's they saw that, and there's this unconscious aspect of that is me. That could be me. They saw it was a white person that this was happening to. They saw this and they're like, that could be me. So there were all these people that like, when women were like saying for years, and black people and brown people were saying for years, like about their fears and their obstacles, it wasn't relatable, but then it became relatable all of a sudden. And naturally, the first thing to do, it was interesting because it wasn't denied, so to speak. But there has been this belief system also that's part of like the dominant culture of the religion of where I live in this particular part of the world, which is this idea that if you are good, bad things don't happen to you. And that's just not true. Like, eventually the universe rearranges things to where people need to pay attention. So maybe, it's time, whatever needs to happen in that regard. Maybe it's time for a re-examination, especially with Cancer and Jupiter, because Cancer is all about history and reviewing it and reviewing sensitivity and just reviewing things. So, I think more of the people who are more individualistic and who are more masculine and who have been the movers and the shakers, so to speak, in my general atmosphere, I just started noticing them becoming aware. Like they were finally on the same page as everybody else, but their reaction to it isn't the same as somebody's reaction who, has had to deal with being aware of these kinds of things that can happen for a long, long time. So yeah, and it's so sad too. So sad. With that occurrence, and it's so sad, like, that violence is really definitely something that needs to be addressed, and around that time, like, a lot of children were killed again, and really sad stuff. But Virgo is a time where you can get down to the details and you can say, okay, what are we going to do about it? Virgo is all about organization, and Virgo is all about serving the people with an organized, detailed manner of going about things. So yeah. So I couldn't deny that I was noticing that happening. And one can only hope that that positive change will occur sometime, someday. But one thing that Virgo is all about too is, because Virgo is all about servitude, and it's all about being organized and paying attention to the details, and it's like the Virgin, and it can also be considered like the Hermit in some ways, is there's things that we just can't control, and coming from somebody who's like a triple Pisces, we feel the feelings. So I was just like, oh gosh, like, a lot of us are sad a lot of the times. Like, I definitely know, like, I could feel the feelings, like every time there's a school shooting, a lot of mothers are really afraid and really sad, and a lot of children are. And now, like, when that was happening, I was like, oh wow, everybody's afraid right now. Like, it's not just mothers and children. Now it's fathers. Now it's single men. Like, now it's Christians. Now it's preachers. Now it's public speakers, everyone. And then that brought up dialogue. That brought up opportunity for people to say, yeah, this is kind of thing, violence needs to be, tended to. And it's not just, this particular guy that this happened to. It happened to a couple of political figures in their home with their dog. And, it happened here and it happened there. And so conversations can happen around it. But Virgo energy, as well as Aries energy, is very much, for me, and I find this useful, is very much like there's what you can control and what you can't control. And you have your time on this planet, and you have your things that you want to do. And so you focus on what you can do and what you can't do, and just focus on mostly what you can do. And that's been a great lesson for me. I don't know, like, not everybody watching this might not be like a triple Pisces. Everybody watching this might not have a high degree of Cancer in their chart. So they might not be sensitive or intuitive or super empathetic. So they might not have to learn those lessons the same way that I did. But those lessons can be really valuable in other ways too, because we're going into that time of the year where people get together with their families more for family holidays. And the lessons that the energy of this, whatever you want to manifest with this eclipse, and not everybody does manifestation work with eclipses. But think about it. What is your cream of the crop? What is it that you're really good at? And what do you want to do with it? Because this is the time to really be focused on that. And also just remember, like, these things that happen, that are hard, that are really big, that are outside of our general, like, the things of our daily life, the things that we, those big things that we don't have any control over, like, we can't make that not have happened to those people. We can't make suffering just vanish overnight, but there are things that we can do, and there are things that we are meant to do based on what our own cream of our crop is. And when I say cream of the crop, what I really mean is, what have you been cultivating in yourself that you're really good at, that you love, that matters to you? Like, what are you good at? What do you love? What makes you tick? And whatever that is, it has a place in the here and the now. And that's what you're meant to be focusing on. And for those of you out there that are super intuitive and super sensitive and have a lot of water in your chart like I do, like, this has been a really good time to just really notice all the ways, like, you know, are you like, for me, for example, the default, we have our defaults, we have our default programming that we were born with. So me, being socialized female since birth, in a culture and in a time, it was the 70s when I was born, I was raised that you take care of your home, you take care of others before yourself, and you do things a certain way. So the programming that we have been programmed with may or may not serve our greatest good and the world around us' greatest good. And it's time to really notice that there's a new chapter or a new story, that this is a new time to change those rules for ourselves, and notice all the places where we don't have the proper boundaries. Those of us who are more sensitive, where we just kind of default into, like, first thing I did when I had the energy of this high degree Virgo today was start cooking, start doing meal prep, make sure everything's going to be organized and clean for, you know, myself and those around me, and a possible potluck that I might feed people at later. Like, and what I really needed to be doing was setting up my music and making sure that it's going to work outside when I perform. Like, my set list, I really need to be practicing my set list and doing it outside before it gets too hot. So it's interesting because we have our, you know, that's what I really needed to be doing if I were prioritizing myself first. But, you know, our habits, hard habits, habits die hard. So it might be something different for you. You know, it could be like whatever it is for you. So I hope this reaches people. I had a really hard time recording this today because I just have so much transiting my own chart, and I'm not really, oh yeah, so it's such a unique moment, you know. The next time that there's an opportunity for 2 new moons in Virgo, like, it might not really occur, because it'll just barely be at 1 degree in some parts of the world. Yeah, so it's really interesting. Oh, and then just finally, so we started off where we had our 2 degrees at Virgo, and we had that at the very beginning. That was our first new moon, and then it ended at 29 degrees. So 2, it has to do with relating to others. And then 29, it's 2, which is feeling, and then 9, which is action. So feeling the ways that we take action. And then that nets to an 11. Okay. And then that nets to a 2. But the nature of that 2 is different than the 2 we started out with. The 2 we started out with was examining our relationship to others and other things outside of ourselves. This is a different type. This is examining what separates us, and in what good ways does it separate us? How do we separate in relation? Where do we begin and end in relation with others? And I don't mean like beginning and ending relationships with others. I mean, where do you feel that you are you and other is other? Because that is part of the reason why we are here. That is part of the service of the ego. That is like the example of, like, in my reality, do I just get up and start cleaning and making sure that everyone's going to have food for the upcoming week that's already prepared, and clean dishes that are put away, and clean air? Or do I work on my own personal project first? While others are working on their own personal project, maybe it's time to work on my own personal project first. Maybe that's the thing to flip and take care of. So it's like recognizing, like, where do I begin in relationship with myself and end in relationship with myself? And where do I begin and end in regards to relationship with others. Yes, it benefits me too to have things put away and have things made in advance, but I don't need to be making, an entire week's of food for others in advance when I have something that I need to do for myself. That is more of a priority because the time when I'm going to be performing is coming up really soon. So, and for you, it could be something totally different, but it's about prioritizing and organizing self before others, because in order for positive change to occur in the world, no matter where we're coming from, no matter what our belief system is, we have to be coming from a place where we are overflowing in our own cup. We have to be coming from a place where we are fully standing within ourself first, before others. And according to that particular astrological alignment, and that's what I see. And that may be a colonized mindset. So disclaimer, because there are other cultures in the world that are more collaborative and value collaboration with others first before prioritizing the self. However, where I happen to be located, that is not the dominant culture. The dominant culture is prioritizing the self first. So yeah. But I can say that when we are giving from an over full cup, what we are giving, the quality of what we are giving is much better than when we are giving from a cup that is lacking. Cheers. Good luck on this new moon and this new moon eclipse. Take good care of yourself. I'm actually probably recording this right as the eclipse is about to occur. And just be really gentle with yourselves. Take really good care of your health. There's going to be a lot of information coming out about health in general, and just be good to yourselves and nurse yourselves and just be really good to yourselves. Cheers and kudos. And I hope this reaches you all and helps whoever it's meant to help. That would be my hope. But at the very least, it helps me because it keeps me organized and keeps me on top of things. Thank you.